The Cincinnati Bengals hosted Teair, Tart, and Mekhi Becton for visits, and the offers are probably out there, but nobody signed. What's next in the trenches?
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We've been doing this podcast together for years now, and if you're new, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find the show on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. We're here every day as the Bengals are working their way through free agency and players are visiting. Some players are signing. We have you covered for all the news and analysis you need here on Locked On Bengals, your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can get $20 off your first purchase of tickets in the Gametime app today using promo code LOCKEDON. And James, what is next in the trenches? Indeed, we spent some time late last week monitoring the visits of Mekhi Becton and Teair Tart. They have, we believe, left Cincinnati at this point without a contract signed. We believe there were offers extended, and here we are on Saturday night recording this a little bit earlier than normal. Just full disclosure, we are recording this Saturday night. And if we need to reconvene Sunday, we will. But the Bengals do not have those final additions on the team yet that we're expecting them to make here in this free agency period.
Let's be honest. Why we're recording Saturday night? Why would we do that? Why would they do that? It's pretty simple. Jake is going to get turned on Sunday. No, I'm just kidding. St. Taddy's Day with Ted Karras. I'm going to his event. You were about to be so mad if I rolled into that.
No, I would have agreed. Yep, that's what I'm doing.
That's right. That's what he's doing. The St. Taddy's Day event. We didn't want to wait until Sunday night to get something out because we know everyone's waiting on pins and needles. So it's literally 11:20-ish at night right now, Eastern time. Jake just got back from his really fun outing over the weekend. And with that, that's enough of that. Let's get to the Bengals, where trench-wise, it's weird. The Mekhi Becton and Teair Tart, everything was playing out the way we're used to these free agents playing out, where, oh, man, they're in the building. Oh, Mekhi Becton, he's here. He's huge. Like the people that saw him in the building, oh, he's a giant man. Because he is. Mekhi Becton is huge. And then you see the photos emerge. Oh, they're at the precinct. Rumors rumbling around Cincinnati because Cincinnati's a very big, small town or small, big town, whatever you want to say. But, oh, man, Joe Burrow was there. And you just kind of thought it would get done. And then Friday happened and Teair Tart's visit was actually reported. And people were like, all right, well, is it going to get done? And then you just kind of ask around. And then Friday night, our Locked On Bengals insiders found out, it's probably not getting done. And they were probably the first, probably not getting done on Friday night. We didn't want them waiting on pins and needles. And so now we're in Saturday night mode. And part of the reason why we're recording now, and we could get burned, is because nothing feels imminent. And I don't know how much you've been on the social channels, but people are kind of panicking a bit. And I wouldn't do that. I don't think there's reason to panic because nothing has really changed. No Bengals target that they were hoping to land 2 days ago has signed. Tyron Smith wasn't a realistic Bengals target. And so other than him, the trench free agents haven't really changed. And yet I do wonder if Mekhi Becton is hoping to get another visit, if Teair Tart's hoping to get another visit. We haven't heard anything yet. And I think that's sort of the key to this, because if not, and the Bengals may just be going poker face, baby. Hey, this is our offer. And if they don't have better offers, then they'll take it eventually. But the Bengals have to be willing to wait a little bit. And that's where it gets a little uncomfortable, I think, at least outside looking in.
Well, that's what the Bengals do. They want to win this negotiation. They have their price and they want to get their number. And we saw them go over a little bit for Sheldon Rankins, but we also saw that Sheldon Rankins' deal is structured in a way that they're very safe next year if it doesn't work out this year. So there's a little bit, I think, of with the Bengals contracts this year. uncertainty that they might have to reset again if some of these guys don't work out. I mean, the 2-year deals all look like 1-year deals with the team option in the second year, the way the contracts are structured. Drew Sample has no prorated money on that contract, apparently. So if they need to cut him in the future, there's no dead cap whatsoever, which is not a structure we've seen the Bengals use, although Andre Perota did inform me that it's not an unheard of structure in the NFL. Some other teams do that. But to your point, Joe Burrow having dinner with prospective free agents at the precinct has always, I want to say, led to that player signing a deal with the Bengals.
Oh, you're right. Always.
And for that not to be the case is what makes this weird. By the way, you're right. You mentioned the Locked On Bengals insider group. Just want to shout that out again. They did get the text, and they've been getting texts all week and throughout the weekend as well. You can join if you're interested at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBengals, just for anybody who's wondering about that, a way to send us text and for us to send you text when we know things. And so you don't have to check social media all the time. But the question is, what's next? And Mekhi Becton, you mentioned hoping for those next visits originally, and this came from the agent almost assuredly. It was reported that he had 2 visits lined up after Cincinnati. We have not seen any reporting around Mekhi Becton since he left Cincinnati. We haven't seen any reporting around Teair Tart since he left Cincinnati. So whether or not those visits and additional interest and market materializes for those guys imminently is what we're really watching for. Or do they start feeling the pressure and say, you know what? Maybe that dinner was good enough. Maybe that contract offer is good enough. But I don't know where else you go if you're the Bengals. So there's definitely a little bit of a game of chicken here where if those guys do go elsewhere, there's some other options at right tackle. But the fall off for the nose tackle group is pretty significant, especially when you talk about guys that might fit their model at all in terms of the young ascending type player that you could argue Teair Tart is.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And there's 2 elements here. And by the way, the Locked On Bengals insiders, just one more time, we're going to talk about Von Bell coming up. Von was not a surprise to you. You all heard about Von a lot this week. So hopefully you've been enjoying the text. We've been trying to keep up with it with free agency popping like it has, because it has been a really busy week. Think about it. Over the past 6 days, as you're listening to this on Sunday, most likely, over the past 6 days, T. Higgins requested a trade, which seems like light years ago. Joe Mixon got traded. The Bengals have introduced a new tight end, a new running back, a new safety. They're going to introduce this coming week defensive tackle. Like, there's been a lot. So anyways, thank you for following along. Thank you for listening and watching and all of those things. But you're right. What's next? Where would they go next? Because I do think there is a pivot point at some point. Let's say Mekhi Becton takes a visit with the Patriots, which I think is a potential destination, a team that could be in the market for another tackle. What would that look like? What would that do to the Bengals? Let's dive into what else is out there. If it isn't Teair Tart, if it isn't Mekhi Becton, what should they do? What will they do? We will do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA, available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
Finding the other options at right tackle, there's a couple obvious names. And some of the names that we talked about as right tackle targets are still out there because that market hasn't moved at all. The defensive interior market has moved a little bit more than offensive tackle, significantly more, in fact, than offensive tackle. But as far as nose tackles, I don't know where you go next if you're the Bengals.
Well, let's talk
Do you
about that.
have ideas there, James?
Yeah, to me, you almost go noseless, where you're not. Honestly, where it's like, okay, we're going to be really, really good at getting after the quarterback, and maybe that is bending and going after Calais Campbell, who joined the NFLPA representatives. I think he's vice president now, which is interesting because when you get a player of that age and then he's part of the union, how quickly does he get picked up? He's still playing at a high level. So I do think that will happen, but it's interesting. But you're right. Like you look at it, Jonathan Hankins, like, is he still out there?
I think so. I mean, I get down to guys like John Jenkins, and you're talking mid-30s at that point, but played acceptable ball last year for Vegas. Played, he's 330 pounds.
You know what they would do?
Size there.
You know what I think they would probably do is sign like Josh Chupo, like just bring him back, and then get which I'd be fine with if you get Calais Campbell, because I think that people, they're like, oh man, what are you going to do without DJ Reader? The Bengals defensive line got better in one area. There's just a big void, of course, without DJ Reader, but they're going to be different. And when you add Sheldon Rankins, you're expecting the pass rush on the interior to be much improved. You're hoping that your young edges, whether it's Joseph Osai or Miles Murphy, that those guys can emerge some, and that your pass rush is just better. So that's the element of this where it's like, okay, you're not going to find DJ Reader and you have to evolve as a defense, because there's just not. You could say Tavondre Sweat. Okay, so there's one guy in the draft, and what are the odds that Sweat comes in day one and is 80% of DJ Reader when DJ's healthy? I don't know, but if they don't him, that it's probably not high, right? And if it's not him, if they're not in on him, there really isn't one. So they're going to probably have to evolve as a defense, even if they do sign Teair, which I still think there's a shot that happens, that they do. Mm-hmm. Regardless, I think from a scheme standpoint, they're just going to have to change a bit. And that's
I think you need to get somebody in. You need somebody for the goal line package at least, like even if it's only 200 snaps. You're not going to go out there with a couple of 290-pound defensive tackles on the goal line.
What about a 190-pound defensive tackle?
Yeah,
Dax Hill.
That's going to go great. Tush push defense, just 190-pound Dax Hill. Get in there.
He knifes in there. Mike Hilton will do it.
But
it is wild because it is really lean.
There is this group of guys that's all in their mid-30s, like Mike Purcell, Nick Williams, John Jenkins, Linval Joseph, even Al Woods, like these guys that have been around forever. And that's one place you could go if you're looking for a veteran. You could go to the trade market. I think we're getting close to trying to figure out where they could find a trade partner, something we'll probably be talking about between now and the regular season, even if they sign Teair Tart, depending on how the draft goes. Because I don't know. I know that you can change the way you play defense, and they will without DJ Reader. They did without DJ Reader. But going entirely without any bulk on the defensive interior is playing with fire. And I don't think that's a place they want to be living, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what they do next is really, really interesting. There really isn't much out there, though. Like even like Jonathan Hankins, I guess the Seahawks are reportedly interested. I just looked him up just to make sure that he's out there. Like, is that someone? Like he doesn't
32 and a half. Like all the other nose tackle options either didn't play last year or 32 and a half or older. Or Montravius Adams would be the one other guy, but he's only 304. He played some nose for Pittsburgh. I don't know if he's really a nose.
Yeah.
So anyway, the options of right tackle are a lot more obvious. If you want to talk about that.
It's pretty simple. Which one do you think? Because to me, it's pretty easy. You go after Trent Brown, and this might be the better scenario. He certainly is better and has been better in the NFL. You look at whether it's PFF metrics, you want to look at the fact that he's played left and right tackle. You're not talking about a potential position change. Obviously, there's more money involved there. Who cares? You got to get someone. Jackson Carman is not going to be penciled in. Deontay Smith is not going to be penciled in, and they better damn well not be penciled in as starters pre-draft. That can't happen. And so you got to get someone. And to me, I get the Mekhi Becton upside. Trent Brown doesn't have that. Like, there's a very real possibility that Mekhi Becton figures it out if he lands in the right spot and ends up being a good NFL player. Like, I could totally see that. But for this season, Trent Brown is the better option. I have no doubt. Even though he's 31, better option. So if Mekhi Becton continues to drag his feet, okay, go get Trent Brown. It's really not that difficult. And the Bengals right tackle, and maybe this is why they're playing hardball. If I'm Teair, Tart, or Mekhi Becton, this is attractive. And it should be attractive to Trent Brown. It should be attractive to Jonathan Hankins. It should be attractive to whoever they reach out to. And we'll see. But I would pivot. Trent Brown, to me, would be the one by Monday morning if I haven't heard from Mekhi Becton. All right. Hey, Trent, come to Cincinnati. Let's go. Let's get this done.
I would talk to him for sure. I also am going to bring up Cam Fleming for like the 17th time, and Joshua Nijman, who's a guy I feel like we've mentioned, but maybe not enough. He has played on both sides. He's a little bit younger. He's turning 29 shortly. He's not in his 30s though, and was a very good athlete. And he was an undrafted guy, so you would imagine that pedigree, the way first round pedigrees follow guys and drive their price up, undrafted pedigrees tend to drive the price down on guys that don't really break out in a big way. Sometimes when you're, a very established player as an undrafted player, then you're very sought after. But Nijman has been kind of a backup, hasn't been on the field a ton for the Packers, but has played both sides, has experience, and is a solid player. And you could do a lot worse. So that's certainly somewhere that I would look if I were the Bengals, would be those two guys as well, if Trent Brown doesn't want to take the call.
The thing that stands out to me, obviously, he would be your potential starter at right tackle. Again, depending on what happens in the draft. And even if they take one, you want to have a guy that can start. You just do. He was a really good pass blocker, according to PFF, in 2022 on the right side. 74.4 pass blocking grade. You take
talking Joshua Nijman there, just to be
clear. Nijman. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I would be in. Now, he's 6'7", 314, so he's a little light. Just in general for that height, no doubt. But hey, that's where the athleticism, the speed, all of those things that you mentioned comes into play. So no, I would be in, and that's the element where if we were counting Calais Campbell as an option, it doesn't feel like it is.
Doesn't.
But then it wouldn't feel as dire with Teair Tart because I don't think Calais Campbell is an option. Nijman is, and he might be their option after Becton. Who knows? He might be ahead of the Trent Brown path. I'm not sure, but regardless, they need to add someone. And I would say it's one of the names that we've mentioned. Other than that, it's probably a bit worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit worrisome either way. You're not going to come out of this with a guy you're feeling terribly comfortable with, like Prince Tega Wanogho. You're not going to explore that option. Chris Hubbard from the Titans, former Steeler. I don't think the Bengals are going to be interested there. So you do run out of guys that have right tackle experience pretty quickly. Cam Fleming, just the other guy I want to talk about. He did play, 2/3 of a season at right tackle for Denver in 2022, played the rest of the season at left tackle that season, was fine. Wasn't a world beater by any means, but was fine. And then went back to Denver and only played a handful of snaps last year, only 126 snaps for Denver in 2023, has been a long-time journeyman type player, but that's what we're talking about at this point. You're talking about a guy that you're hoping they draft a rookie to challenge.
Sure. And I think that there is a clear gap between some of these, and then
no doubt.
And so Nijman would be fine. He'd definitely be a fine swing backup. You'd feel pretty good there. I think Becton has the highest upside of anybody we've talked about. Fleming is like really safe floor because he's been there, done that. And then you got a guy in Trent Brown who I do think could start for you day one, and you feel pretty comfortable.
And the issue with Trent Brown is only that he has made it through 3 out of 9 tries in NFL seasons healthy. He just gets hurt all the time.
Sure. Big dude, weighs a lot. You're 6'8", 3. He makes Orlando Brown Jr. look light, which is just kind of wild to think about. But
so does Becton.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. They are. How many steaks you think he had the other night? 4?
A
He was
lot.
like, "Hey, I'm here for the steak." Up next, the Bengals, they are not lean anymore at safety. Let's discuss the safety room and what we think is going to happen with a suddenly crowded room on the back end. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater, anything you could think of. That event, it's going to be on Gametime with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can pull it up on your phone with the Gametime app. I've used it. It's super simple. And the best part is the fact that you get the view from your seat and there aren't a bunch of hidden fees when you go to checkout. You don't get hit with convenience fee, online fee, app fee. No. It's all right there. You know the price you're getting, you know the seat you're getting and what it's going to look like. So you can find the best seat for you at a price range you're comfortable with. And they have tickets available up to an hour after the event starts. So if you want to, on a whim, go to the latest Reds game when the Reds are in town or whatever the case is, Gametime has you covered. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Gametime app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Von Bell back in Cincinnati, the leadership back in Cincinnati. That was a very clear aspect of his meeting with the media late last week. And it's something that is needed. And it was great to see Von's genuine appreciation for being back in Cincinnati and his connection with Louis Anarumo. But the question remains, how do you get these guys on the field? What will the roles be? How will they use Von Bell's ability to the greatest effect that they can find? And what does that all mean for Dax Hill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild because I think Dax is good. And I've felt that way, and I'm probably going to continue to feel that way. And I'm not sure how we're going to see Dax. I obviously joked about the nose tackle element of it, but Lou said, he needs to get good at one thing. I don't know how they figure out what that one thing is, because to me, it's a really crowded safety room now, and Von is going to get snaps. He did not come here to be a backup. That doesn't mean that he'll start every game. Jordan Battle could start some. I think there will be a rotation element to this defense. But even so, that they rotate 3. So Dax Hill's the guy that comes in and guards tight ends, depending on the matchup, and does that. Backs up Mike Hilton too, and backs up both safeties. And I just think that it's a really interesting scenario where I do think the Bengals are better. I think their issues on the back end should be solved, but part of solving them is putting Geno Stone and Von Bell on the field. And so if you do that, how do you get Jordan Battle and Dax Hill involved? And I get it. Some are like, who cares? It's all about winning. Fair. I have no doubt in my mind that the highest ceiling in that safety room is still 23. It's still Dax Hill. Now, that doesn't mean at deep safety, but I think if you're looking at who has the most potential, it's him. I also think that the way this has been handled, and I'm not even saying the Bengals are fully wrong, because in a vacuum, when you go moment by moment, I'm not sure anyone's to blame, but now you're here and it's like, man, how the hell did we get here from 31st overall pick to not really knowing where you're going to put him, how he's going to get on the field, even though I think everyone knows he can make plays. And so that's what's really unique here is I don't know how they handle it. I think they're better on the back end and for not a lot of money, so you'll take it. But how it all fits together, I think, is interesting, and it's going to be a storyline throughout training camp.
Yeah, I think when you look at the evolution of the safety room over time, you go from solid as it gets with Jesse Bates and Von Bell. I know some people had issues with Jesse Bates' performance in his last 2 years in Cincinnati, but the talent was always there. The ability was always there. That never changed. And he showed up
And
in
the
the playoffs.
trust didn't change, just to be clear. That was a big factor. The trust was always there from Lou.
And he understood what Lou was trying to do. There weren't communication issues with Jesse Bates back there. His individual play may have suffered at times, and that was a talking point, and it's something that we hope we don't have to go through again with T. Higgins this year. But But for all intents and purposes, Jesse Bates was the same player, even if there were some times where he didn't shine like the player of his ability can shine. So you have a really, really good free safety. You have a really good veteran strong safety in Von Bell, who, like we've talked about, culture setter, leadership ability, and not a bad player either by any means, to the point where you call him a good starter in our categorization system. If you're looking at the free agency Google sheet that we've shared on Twitter and on social media and to our Locked On Bengals insiders, there's a tab in there that categorizes changes, and that's just kind of showing over time the level of play that they got from 21 to 24. And then they have a big step back in 23, where Dax Hill shows a lot of promise, but makes a lot of mistakes. And in particular, makes those mistakes in the deep part of the field where, he's in zone coverage and is giving up, or is part of why the Bengals are giving up explosive plays because of mental mistakes, because of individual mistakes, whatever it is. Didn't go as well as it could for Dax Hill, to the point where, like you're talking about with trust, that is fractured with the coaching staff. And they're skeptical about whether he's the right person to be back in that role communicating. And Jordan Battle comes along, eventually rests the role, most of the role anyway, away from Nick Scott, who also never really seemed to fit and had an impressive conclusion to the season. But it's hard to project that too much, to the point where they are still bringing Von Bell back. So you get Geno Stone in the building, and you hope that erases a lot of the mental mistakes they had in the back end with Dax Hill. You hope that raises the floor, and it should significantly raise the floor of your deep half or your post safety, and that's what Geno Stone's role is primarily going to be. Then you get this combination of everybody else, Jordan Battle, Von Bell, Dax Hill, fitting in for the rest of the safety room and trying to figure out how to maximally leverage their abilities to get the most out of that back end. And despite all of that, I think they're still worse than they were in 2022. They're going to be better, hopefully, than they were in 2023 with all the resources they've spent there. But how much better? Is it better enough? Does it help bring the corners up? That's what they really need to do. Does it help elevate the linebackers so they're not trying to do too much? That's what it's got to do for it to be worth this investment that they've made to try to fix a problem after they've already allocated resources, like you said, where in retrospect, it feels pretty bad to have to go sign free agents when you've got a 3rd round pick and a 1st round pick in a non-premium position. Hopefully it's good enough, right? And that's what they have to figure out with these guys that they don't have a clear role for.
And that's where you'd say, all right, well, if Dax Hill takes a step forward and reaches another level or 2 levels, that's the guy, that's the wild card that could raise the level of the back end to that 2022 level. And I just don't even know if there's a realistic possibility of that happening without injury. I just don't. Because if I think you can play Geno Stone and Dax Hill together, I do. But are they going to start with those guys and then have Von Bell rotate and then Jordan Battle's just sitting over there? Are they going to start out with, you know what I'm saying? It's just really hard for me to see a scenario where Dax Hill plays. He had well over 1,000 snaps. So was on the field basically. Yeah. He was Jesse Bates from being on the field perspective. Never left the field this past year. Does he get to 500 snaps this year without injury? You would take the under as of now, right?
It's weird because we have 4 guys at the safety position that all need to get on the field. And the Bengals for the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years, I don't remember exactly, have pretty much had 200% safeties. I guess not last year. Last year, it was only 85%.
They would have if Nick Scott was who they thought he was. They would have.
That's their general approach. But now they have 4 guys that need to play. It's very, very interesting. It's very different from what they've had there.
And so there's the evolution. The defensive line room is going to have to evolve some, and we'll talk about that a ton. You talk about an off-season topic. That is going to, regardless, you could have Byron Murphy in there and Tavondre Sweat, round 1, round 2. And we're still going to talk about it because it's going to be a little different and it's going to feel different. And the back end is too. And we'll see what they do. I think that there's certainly a cornerback move that could be made, but safety wise, I think Dax Hill is backing up a bunch of spots and playing in certain roles and certain packages. And the Jordan Battle Von Bell thing is really, really interesting. I will say this, as much as Von Bell loves all the people and loves Lou, there's no way he came here to not play at all. There's just no way to be the third guy that's just watch. I don't buy it one bit for those that think that. And so we'll see. But if I think if there was a game tomorrow, there's not. It'd be Geno Stone and Von Bell.
Going to be an interesting camp battle. The safeties are going to be interesting in camp. And it's a hard position to evaluate in camp. That's mostly something that we're going to have to hope the coaches give us some honest answers about, because safety in general, hard position to evaluate. And now we're talking about Dax Hill and we were talking about Joseph Osai playing in preseason games last year. This year, we're going to be talking about Jordan Battle and Dax Hill playing preseason games.
What's stupid is Dax has already flashed in the preseason. Anyways, as a rookie.
Yeah. He flashed in the regular season. It's just
no doubt. Mistakes. No doubt. But I just mean it's like, he definitely flashed in the regular season. Will Dax Hill solve the Bengals' punter issues? That's next. Will Dax Hill help the Bengals in the slot with no Tyler Boyd? That's next. Will Dax help the Bengals be more explosive by playing? That's a new bit. Buckle up. Dax is just going to play everywhere because they have nowhere to put him. They're going to put him everywhere.
We'll be back.
Is Jake Browning a trade candidate with Dax Hill backing up Joe Burrow? That's next.
If there are more moves that happen on Sunday, we will be back on Sunday after Ted Karras event.
Will Dax Hill negotiate the contracts of Teair, Tart, and Mekhi Becton?
And then we will continue to have you covered here on Locked On Bengals as week 2 of free agency continues and things start to quiet down a little bit. The focus might shift a little bit toward pro days, toward top 30 visits, but there's still a couple of glaring roster spots that they need to fill. And we'll have you covered as they make those moves. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hooday, and have a good one.
Will Dax Hill announce the Bengals' first-round pick in the draft?